a product-based business outside of the US selling to the US, your profit margins are probably about to take a hit. The US government announced new tariffs which would impact many countries around the world. And while this sounds like it's in the far-off land of politics, the reality is this could actually really impact your brand and how you grow it globally. So let's talk about what it actually means and how we can move smart. And here on this channel, I share the honest behind-the-scenes situation of growing a product-based business. The experiments, the mistakes, and what's actually working. Since I'm currently in the US, I thought it's actually a good time to talk about all of the tariffs. So earlier this month, the US government announced import tariffs into the US. For the UK, this is 10% across the board and up to 25% for certain commodities like cars and steel. And although we're not exporting heavy machinery, it still impacts small businesses like mine and yours. Let's take a candle for example. The new tariffs mean that I need to pay an extra 10% if I'm importing this into the US. Now this means that either the end product goes up or I may choose to continue selling at the same price and let my business absorb these costs. Either way, the business is going to have that impact one way or the other. And this is going to impact loads of businesses, whether you're in the wellness, lifestyle, or beauty spaces. So what can we actually do about it? This is what I'm considering. So the first thing I would say is diversify your market. So I personally was planning to expand into the US this year, as the US is the biggest market in the world alongside China. So succeeding here means you can go really big and explode your business. But with these tariffs, I would need to go ahead and then recalculate all of my costs of doing business in the US and see if it's still viable for me starting out. While I'm calculating the cost of doing business in the US, I'm also going to look and explore other different territories where maybe these tariffs aren't imposed. By no means am I going to stop my plans of expanding into the US. It just means I need to recalculate and actually make sure that it makes sense for the business, and I'm not going to put myself into a huge money pit by doing so. Tip number 2 is to use a US 3PL or fulfillment center. If I take myself as an example, I currently do have customers in the US via Etsy or my website, and I'm shipping them one by one. Now, let's say I had very high volumes of customers from the US and, customs are being paid every time an item is sent. Another idea is shipping a bulk load of products to a fulfillment center or fulfillment partner in the US, so you only pay the customs fees once. As I said, by doing this, you're avoiding repeat customs charges and you're also avoiding delays. So you're not worried about each individual package, being shipped from the UK to the US, because to be honest, more often than not, something goes wrong whenever I ship something from the UK to the US to an individual customer. So like I said, this is a really good strategy if you already have a high volume of sales in the US, or even if you are planning to test out the US, I would say send over maybe a small batch of products to a fulfillment center, and then you can kind of test it from there to see if it's worth going into the US or not. Tip number 3 is to partner with a US-based maker. So another angle is to collaborate with a small business maker in the US. If you feel comfortable to develop specs and standards of what your product should be, you can easily find tons and tons of makers who are able to create a product in the US. The biggest benefit of doing this is, of course, avoiding any import duties at all. For a situation like this, you would need to decide and weigh up between, is it better for you to make the product yourself and ship it in and pay import, or is it more economical for somebody else to make it and avoid the import duties? So it really depends on the maker's costs and how much they're charging you, because of course if they're charging you like $20 for a candle, it's obviously it's probably more economical to go ahead and just pay the import duties. So what I would suggest is maybe looking at places like Fair, where there are a ton of people who make white label products. You can start a conversation with them and actually send them your specs and standards of what you're expecting, what kind of labels and boxes and everything, and ask them to quote you for a full final product and see what they say. Tip number 4 is to adjust your pricing or product mix. If you're absorbing new costs, what you may want to do is gently start to increase your prices of your products, or focus on bundles or higher margin products. You don't need to do this overnight. You can test it and see what's working and go from there. Finally, tip number 5 is to keep building local. If you were intending to expand into the US or you're already there, I would say don't neglect, your home country and nurturing the products over there. The US is obviously really exciting, but you could still be stronger in your home country because you know the target market a lot better. Think about pop-ups, gift stores, and partnerships, and keep building your presence in your home country to build your brand and loyalty whilst you're figuring out international markets. So I know the word tariff sounds really political and distant, as I said in the beginning, but it really does impact us, and it's important as a business owner to understand those impacts on our business. It's easy to feel like we don't have control, but that's not true. We do, and we just really have to be proactive and strategic of how we intend to run our business. I hope this video gives you a little bit more clarity on what tariffs will mean for your small business. I'm by no means an expert, and I'm still navigating it myself. I'll definitely share the journey of my expansion into the US and see what I learn and what you can do better from my mistakes. So definitely go ahead and click the subscribe button if that's something of interest to you, as well as any general small business stuff. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and please let me know how this is impacting your business if you are planning to go to the US and maybe this is making your decision not to go there. I'd love to know where's your head at and what are you thinking. Until next time, bye.